Hi, everybody. Welcome to tonight's shir with Let's Get Real with Coach Menachem Bernfeld. And tonight is shir 121. We're doing this for a long time. I just looked up with Rabbi Cohen right before the shir. Rabbi Cohen was on the shir about 2.5 years ago in July. So it's a big schus to have the shir back with us. Thank you for coming again. And again, I start off every week first thanking all the people that come on every week and they advertise it on their WhatsApp statuses, they email it around to their friends. It's a tremendous chizik for everybody. And again, like I said, every week, if the topic is not relevant to you, people know about it. It's a tremendous chizik for all the people that are involved. 1 second. Okay, and if anybody wants to join our WhatsApp statuses every Sunday, I can send you the flyer. So you could post it and send it around. You can WhatsApp me at 848-525-0066. Again, the number is 848-525-0066. You can go to menachembernfeld.com. And you could sign up to get his weekly email that has the flyers every week and the replay. Menachem tonight, the replay will be put up a few hours after the share, middle of the night, and then you get a ding. If anybody's going to watch us later on YouTube, you can click on the subscribe button. So every week when Menachem puts up a shiurim, and he has a Wednesday night program, it goes up. You get automatically dinged, and you get notified about it. Also, you can click on the like button. So appreciate that. I want to first also start off all the advertising sponsors for promoting us on all the digital platforms. First over here in Lakewood. The Lakewood Scoop for promoting us in Lakewood, Ellie and Ariel from Five Town Central for always promoting us in the Five Towns area. Special thank you to Chaya Cohen and Shmuel Summer from JCN for promoting us on all the digital platforms. We really appreciate it. Again, if anybody's here the first time, we're doing this already for a long time. Every Sunday night at 9:30 p.m. We have different shiurim on different topics. And next week, November 13th, I don't know who's coming on yet. There's a few people, but I'm just going to give you a little bit of the lineup who's coming on. As of now, November 20th, we have Moshe Rappert from Tom's River. November 27th, Menachem who's November 27th, Rosh Hashanah from Eretz Yisrael. What's his name?
Center.
The center is coming on Hashem, and then Meshulam Epstein will be December 4th. So we have a big lineup, tremendous topics coming up. So please join us every week. And Hashem, as soon as we confirm this, November 13th, we'll let you know, and we'll send it out via text and email and everything. So please stay. It's always going to be a powerful program. So please join us next week as well. Again, tonight we have the schus and honor of having the shiv with us from Reconnecting from ZA. He's also the creator priority one of Shaya Cohen. Shall be mechazik tonight with a very important topic that we all need constant chizik and reminders and re-mechazik it. So thank you again for coming on Hashem, for all the people that are here tonight, all the hundreds of people in the Menachem, the thousands of people that listen to it. There'll be a big chizik again. Let's start off with the coach Menachem Bernfeld to open it up. What are we talking about, Menachem? What are we doing here tonight?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Welcome everyone to another Let's Get Real with Coach Menachem and Baruch Hashem. We're doing tonight number 121 with a lot of siyata d'shmaya. And then, like I always like to thank all of you who send your feedback from last week's program, and I'm still getting from a week before, and we're constantly getting from all the programs. Everybody gets to see it when it works for them, but just to send me an email with any comments, positive, negative thoughts, questions, always good to see the way people take the share. The topic of Chinuch, we've had a lot of programs, and it's not an easy one. But we have some people who want to know just how to start. Just got married, and would love to know the tips, the steps, how to start with the young kids, so that they can avoid many things that they hear Baruch Hashem not experienced. And then there are others who have gone through many years and with a lot of their kids and different experiences, trying to understand how to connect, why things happening, why can't one kid be like the other. And it is a challenge. And they sometimes push us to the wall. Sometimes we learn about ourselves from our kids. We would love to be in a regular routine, whether it's work, to learn, and the kids should go to school, do everything they need to do. But what happens sometimes, they force us to stop and try to figure out what they need. Why is it difficult for me to connect with them? And sometimes it's easier than others, and everybody has their experience. So we've heard in the past, shalom bias could affect chinuch. If the kids don't feel secure, they don't feel they have a place where they can just connect. The parents don't have the same view, so that could be a problem. We've heard about how becoming self-aware of how are you mechanech your kids, what's the reaction that we have. Many have a reaction and we don't realize that it's just the way, we need some healing, the way we grew up, and it's just coming up with our kids. So many people have that question, if all of these things have an effect on chinuch, so where am I going? My spouse, maybe I understand, but they don't, or we don't always get along. So it could be tough. And I just want to mention, we do live in the world of information. There's a lot of information out there. There are different approaches in chinuch. There's shiurim, classes, courses, books, Baruch Hashem. Nothing to talk about. Baruch Hashem, things have changed and we're learning a lot. But the real answer is to be able to connect, to understand. Not so much the information, it's how to apply the information and see which child needs what. Why does it bother me that much? What's behind it? And it does take time. We do have to slow down, and we just can't continue with the fast-paced routine when this happens. So yeah, they do push us to the wall and put us to work. So Baruch Hashem, we have the supposed to have with us tonight, Rabbi Cohen, which you're talking about many, many, many years. One of the first in this line. And we're here to ask him, some experience for those who are starting the journey. Just would love to know what to avoid, how to start. And for those who have many questions, trying to figure things out, and with his experience, maybe you can help us a little bit. We should have a lot of siyata d'shmaya, which we all need, especially in this topic. And Hashem should help. We should be able to take out what we need to hear, so we should be able to apply it in Mitzvah Hashem.
Menachem, beautiful opening. So again, we're here tonight with Rabbi Cohen. The topic is revolutionizing our children's chinuch experience, how to successfully prepare our children for life. So that's the topic. And Rabbi Cohen, I'll read the short bio that I have of you, but we'll get into it. Rabbi Cohen will open up. Rabbi Shaya Cohen is the founder of Priority One. It was opened in 1987 to help at-risk teenagers and their parents and families. Using his experience for over 4 decades in the Jewish education, Rabbi Cohen has developed a keen ability to identify and deal with issues that children face in our education system. He has the unique ability to give over to others the ideas and the tools necessary to prevent these issues in the future. Rabbi Cohen has been Rosh Hashiva of Zichanari ZA and Koil Ner Yeshua for the past 20, and it says 20 years, probably more than that, Rabbi Cohen, right?
It's 30, but who's counting?
Who's counting? Well, once you're already past that, who's counting already? And Rabbi Cohen, it's supposed to have you back here. Please open it up for the Olam. There's a lot of questions that came in, and everybody should ask live. The floor is yours.
Okay, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation and the privilege to be here this evening and to share some ideas and hopefully to be somewhat helpful to parents who are concerned and very dedicated and committed, lovingly committed to the chinuch of their children. In broad terms, on the one hand, we're doing quite well. I don't think that 60, 70 years ago, anyone would have imagined that we should have such an enormous system of chinuch, network of chinuch, of yeshivas, of day schools, of high schools, of besiftas, of yeshivas gedolos, of koilelim, of learning programs. It's amazing what's going on. And the level of observance, of commitment to Yiddishkeit is certainly far greater than in recent modern American history. That having been said, there are problems, there are challenges. There are many challenges, and individual parents face these challenges. Moistus, yeshivas, schools of all sorts also face challenges because the world is very challenging today, and the challenges of Yiddishkeit are as old as the Torah itself. We were created with the Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Hara, and there's constantly that battle. So we're facing an age-old problem, which certainly has been exacerbated by all of the difficulties and challenges and temptations and I would say insanity that surrounds us in the world today. So this is the world we face. Unfortunately, many of our finest are apathetic about the Yiddishkeit, or maybe even drifting from Yiddishkeit, and many have drifted. And that drift, we don't have any way of predicting. Well, we might be able to predict, but it's certainly a serious phenomenon. And we would like to do everything that we can as parents, and as mechanchim for that matter, to number one, to strengthen the chinuch that we're giving our children, to make sure that they're not apathetic, rather they're passionate about the Yiddishkeit, that they're so passionate and understanding, and that it's so meaningful and precious and sense of privilege to them that they want to stay with it for the rest of their lives, and they're committed to it with a deep-rooted sense of commitment, not just habitual and what we call milumoda, just happening to to keep to it in a very very methodical way, not necessarily with the feeling of the commitment. So this is what we're looking for. So I guess I would suggest that there are a couple of very basic principles in chinuch which we should keep in mind, and then I'd be happy to attempt, b'siyata d'shmaya, I hope I'll be able to help somewhat to try to answer some of the questions at least. First of all, the first thing we have to look at chinuch, actually Rashi in this week's parsha tells us on the Posuk Vayorech es Chanichov that chinuch is a long-term process. He says chinuch is a tchilas knisas odom leumnas she'osid lamu bo. We have to look at the long term. Chanoich lanar al pi darkoi, if you're mechanech him according to his own way, gam ki yazkin lo yosu mimenu. When he gets older, he will not forsake it. He will not go away. But the goal of chinuch is long term, which means that we often have to compromise or look the other way on short term problems if it's going to detract from the long term goal. And we sometimes have to do things which are going to help to bring the long-term goal, even though in the short term, they don't seem to make too much sense to us. So that's point number one. We have to think long-term. Unfortunately, sometimes as parents, we think short minute because the problem is now. I'm upset now. The kid is misbehaving now. Something is happening right now, and I must do something about it. Not necessarily. Because if what I'm going to do about it is going to be short-term effective and long-term detrimental, that's not chinuch, that's not what I want to do. That I would say is point number one. Point number two, I think everybody knows that parents love their children. It's natural, it's inborn, it's genetic. I think we all know that that love is critical for giving over a message, a way of life, a mesorah, a direction, an inspiration. Without that love, there's no conduit, there's no tzinor, there's no pipeline to be able to give it over. But I think as parents, we have to realize that on some level, our love is not as powerful as it might be, because our children know that we're pre-programmed. My grandmother loves me. What else is new? Like, that's to be expected. So there's another ingredient that's very important to chinuch, and that is respect for our children. Now, many people, when they hear that, they look askance. They say, what are you talking about? Kabedes avicho es imecho. Vu shteit kabedes yiladecho. But you know something? That's critical. The Rambam says in Hilchas Talmud Torah that just like the Rab, he's talking about a Rebbe and a Talmud, is mechuyev to be mechabed his Talmud. The such as the Talmud is mechuyev to be mechabed the Rav. Kach horav tzorich lechabed es talmido ulekorovoi. He must respect his Talmud and be mekarev and draw him close. And I say the same thing applies to parents. And I'd like to try to explain why. Because really, happiness is what everybody wants. Everybody wants to be happy. If you make me happy, you're the most important influence in my life. The definition of happiness is the highest level, I believe, is osher. The shorish of osher, aleph shin reish, refers to ishur, validation. Happiness is about feeling good about yourself. If our children feel good about themselves, they're happy. If we make them feel good about themselves, we're making them happy, we become the most influential force and factor in their lives. Now, love makes us feel good about ourselves because, oh, why does someone love? Because I have qualities. Parental love is a little bit shorter on that because my mother may love me, my father may love me because they're programmed, they're kids. What can they do? They have no choice, especially in a world, and I've heard it unfortunately too often, where a parent can say, oh, I certainly love my child, I just don't like him. And what they're really saying is they don't like the behavior. But you know something? That's terrible because the love has to be total and unconditional. But since it's parental, it's a little bit not as powerful. Respect from a parent? Why should a parent respect me? Why should a parent respect my time? Why should a parent respect my space? Why should a parent respect my room? Respect my time. You must take a bath right now. Oh, maybe would you like to do it now? Would you like to do it in 10 minutes from now? You must clean up right now. No, you could either do it now or you could do it 5 minutes later. The fact that they respect me, my time, my space, my feelings, my ideas, my opinion, it does so much to validate, and the parent becomes so influential in the life of the child. I know many people don't like this attitude, they don't like this idea, but it's so important. And it gives such a sense of happiness and security to the children that it's really a critical ingredient in Chinuch. There are many other critical ingredients in Chinuch. One is modeling. We must model the behavior and the feelings, the emotions, and the passions that we want our children to have. If they don't see passion for Yiddishkeit in us, then they're not going to be able to get that message unless it happens that they get it from the outside. If they don't see integrity in our actions, honesty, kindness, sensitivity, all of the milas and all of the midos that we want them to have, then we're depriving them of the most powerful model that can really teach them and show them how to act. And all too often, we find ourselves sometimes in compromising situations. And if a child feels for a moment that a parent is being disingenuous or hypocritical, cholila, that destroys the respect, that destroys the relationship, and it's devastating. So modeling also the behaviors that we want is very, very important. I think even as parents, not only as machanchim, we have to be open to questions and answer questions. Certain questions we must know the answer to. They're basic, and if we don't know the answer to, then they feel something's wrong. Other questions we don't have to know the answer to, but we have to. It's a good question. It's a serious question. I will look into it. We'll ask someone. We'll research. We'll do something. Take it seriously. That shows respect, and that shows confidence in what you believe, that you're willing to entertain questions and to be able to deal with them so they also get the answers that they need. Far too many kids have been left just hanging with too many questions gnawing away at them. And at some point when push comes to shove and things are not going so well, some trauma, some tragedy, some challenge, some very powerful outside influences which exist all the time, and they cave in because anyway, they have a very soft, a very weak basis for the basics of Yahadus. So I think that's also very, very, very important. I think that when we deal with our children, we have to learn the art of negotiation. Now, this also rubs some parents the wrong way. But unfortunately today, we don't have the upper hand. When parents tell me, I feel I'm losing control over my child, I laugh. I don't laugh. I hold myself from laughing. But I think to myself, when did you ever have control over the child? Who has control over the child? You know, today, there's a very simple formula that children have. I'm going off the derech. Do me something. You know, what are you going to do? You can't force. So we have to learn the art of negotiation. When they want something and we feel it's not appropriate, we have to sit down and talk about it. And the first and most important thing that a parent can do in a conversation, in fact, The three most important things that a parent can do in a conversation is listen, listen, and listen again. Listen to them, hear them out, understand where they're coming from, show that you take their position and their feelings and their attitudes and their needs seriously. Then you will be in a position through love and respect to negotiate. Sometimes we need compromise. We're not talking about your little kids. There's not that much room for compromise there, although sometimes, but certainly as they get older, we can't expect that they're going to do everything that we tell them to do just because we told them to do it. And that leads us to another point. And that is the point of explain why we do things. There's no such thing as Xeris HaKosuv Midrabanan. Xeris HaKosuv means there are chukim. We don't necessarily know the reason, but Hashem said so. Every Darabonon, every Takonas Chachomim, every rule that we make has to be rational. And we have to explain to them the rationality of rules. Now, I know there are some that will say, well, if you get in the mode of explaining to your kid, then they'll say, okay, I disagree with the explanation, and then they're off. But if you don't explain to them, they're going to say it even faster and more furiously because you're forcing them to do something that doesn't make any sense. So we have to make sure that what we ask of them makes sense. And then we have to be sure that we explain to them. If they understand, the Sefer HaChinuch wrote a whole book as a gift for his bar mitzvah brother. And he has one mitzvah there he's afraid he doesn't know the reason for. And he's afraid if he doesn't write that one, the kids might go off the derech altogether. So he says in Parshas Vayikra, the mitzvah of not bringing sore and basha on the mizbeach. Take a look. And what do you mean? He says, because even though he wrote on all the other mitzvahs, but there's one thing that doesn't make sense. The Torah is like a sefer chosum. It's like a hidden thing, and they could be in danger. They must understand the reasons, and they must understand benefits, because we live in a world that everybody wants something for himself, and the benefits are critical. We just learned in this parasha yesterday, the Ralbag says that before Hashem told Avram Avinu that there's going to be a bris, that he has to use a knife, he told him first the benefits of entering a covenant before he tells him about the knife. And only then did he tell him. And he says, we learn from there that you have to first give the benefits. And the benefits, the cheshek for the benefits will mitigate the pain. Otherwise, it could affect, on some level, even an Avram Avinu. So these are some of the things I think that we have to keep in mind in our chinuch. And also, I would say a lot depends on relationship with our children. No, we have to be parents and not just friends, but we have to also be friends. When a person can feel that his parents are his parents, his guides, they guide him in terms of what to do, but we also have a close friendship. We get together, we enjoy each other's company, we want to share things, we have open minds, we have open conversation, we have an open channel of communication. It creates a type of a relationship that no child is going to want to violate, that no child is going to want to give up on. In fact, we know that in times of old, when families were much closer, then if somebody was going to marry out, then the approach would be Avelus and Shiva and Kriya and all of that. And today, it seems from the poskim that that's not what should be done, because then they had such a strong family relationship that could make the difference. Today, relationships are most fun, not so strong. We have to strengthen them because that's the core of the hashpah, of the influence that we have on our children. And therefore, that's also extremely, extremely, extremely important. We should learn with our children. Now, many children, when you learn with them, they think, oh, my father, my mother just testing me. No, maybe they should learn something not that they're learning in school, but just that they're sharing ideas in Torah. And that creates a very positive environment. We have to realize that we can't put too much burden or pressure on them, because pressure is the number one killer in the world, stress and pressure. And when we put too much pressure on our children, then pressure evokes resistance. And that isn't a very healthy thing. And then I would add to that one more thing. We have to be so careful about building them up making them feel good about themselves, not criticizing, not putting them down. This is my child. This is my flesh and blood. This is my kadishal. I'm so distraught if they're not acting properly. But we have to be careful that we do not put them down. Yaakov Avinu on his deathbed apologizes to Ruvain for not reprimanding him when he had the Maisa with Bilah until he was on his deathbed, because he's afraid, he says, you would leave me lidobik be'esav to join Esav's yeshiva. Yaakov, who know how to be mochiach in such a gentle way, was afraid that Ruvain the tzaddik, who had already done tshuva for his mistake, would leave him to do what? To join up with Esav Rosha. That's the power, the fear, the power that reprimand. We have to be so careful. Parents are so prone to criticism because I love you, I care about you, I see what you're doing wrong. But the criticism is devastating. Build up, don't knock down. And if you do have to point something out, point out how the act is inappropriate. Never the person was inappropriate for acting that way. These are some ideas I think that could be helpful in general in Chinuch, but of course it's much more nuanced and much more extensive than anything that can be said in a short period of time.
Okay, Shaya Cohen for that beautiful opening. We have a lot of questions which we'll try to get to tonight. Anybody's here can text Usher Parnas on chat, and we'll put obviously live questions go first. Let's try to do that. We have Rabbi Cohen here. He wants to answer the questions. He wants to feel comfortable. Sichas Chaverim, really get into it. So feel comfortable asking. And let's take a poll now, Rabbi Cohen, for a minute. We'll ask the Olam, and then we'll jump into some questions. Okay?
Okay, whatever you say.
Okay. 2-question poll over here. 2 questions. Answer. How do you feel appropriate for yourself? You answer the questions. What is your general plan in Chinuch? 4 options. Like, what's your? How do you do Chinuch? How do you raise your children? Number 1, whatever my parents did, that is what I do. You know, what I was taught, the way I was doing, that's what I do with my kids. It's not explaining what it is, but it's just whatever it is, that's what I do. Number 2, I give them the freedom, and they should learn on their own. Let them, learn on their own. Whatever is good is good. Option 3, I remind them what is right and what is wrong and keep them on track. Option number 4, I don't have a plan. I'm just trying to figure something out. The second question, Rabbi Cohen. What is the main reason that kids are not turned on to Yiddishkeit? Again, this is in your opinion. 4 options. Number 1, a lack of knowledge and meaning in Yiddishkeit. Number 2, too many distractions and temptations in the world. Number 3, trauma from outside factors. Or number 4, the lack of excitement from the parents. Those are the 2 questions. Everybody should answer that. And then Rabbi Cohen, after everybody answers, we'll do a chazar on some of the questions, get your insight on it, and then we'll jump into questions, okay?
Okay.
Let's give it to 30 seconds. Menachem, what are you choosing? Which options? Okay. We're going to end the poll now, and then we're going to share with everybody. Okay, here we go. Okay. What is your general plan in Chinuch? Rabbi Cohen, only 3% say they do whatever their parents did. Only 5% said give them the freedom and they should learn on their own. Majority of people, 70% of people say I remind them what is right and what is wrong to keep them on track. And 22% of people say I don't have a plan, I'm just trying to figure something out. Rabbi Cohen, you have anything to say on this poll?
Okay, what you'd like my comment? Well, what are you looking for?
What's your thought on it?
Okay, well, I think of course, the one that I remind them and what's right and wrong, keep them on track, is definitely on track. However, I don't think it's that simple. Reminding is not necessarily enough, and reminding can be annoying as well. I think the first thing is to make sure they know what's right and what's wrong, to make sure they understand why it's right and why it's wrong, to make sure they have a sense of the context of where it comes from, that this is not just something that somebody made up arbitrarily, but we have a Borei Olam who created the world and who gave us the Torah at Har Sinai and gave us directives in his Torah Shebichsav and in his Torah Shebal Peh, how to conduct our lives. And they have a sense of that it's all for our benefit. It's all because Hashem wants to reward us and do chesed. It's all the mitzvahs are to improve us and to refine our character. And they have to have more than just a sense of what's right and wrong, but to know why and why it benefits them and what it's so important. And then how do you keep them on track? That's also not so simple. And the way to keep them on track, or hopefully to try to keep them on track, is many of the things that I mentioned before, by proper modeling, by learning with them, by constantly speaking with them, by listening to what they have to say, by hearing their problems and addressing them, rather than just letting them fester or shoving them under the carpet. And it's a whole avodah to keep them on track. And I think that needs a lot of focus and a lot of, I would say, parental training. Well, parents have to be guided into, how to do that. It's a whole avodah, it's a whole chokhmah. But I definitely think that's the right approach, but it just has to be expanded upon a lot more.
Rabbi Cohen, now the second question, what's the main reason that kids are not turned on to Yiddishkeit? So you have a very big split over here across the board. You see over here, lack of knowledge and meaning, 30%, 27%, too many distractions and temptations, 19% traumas from outside factors, 24% the lack of excitement from the parents. It seems like it's all four answers. Everybody's basically, it's an even split. What's your opinion on what's
well, there's no main reason.
Right.
The answer really is there is no main reason. And I think that's what the split shows, that there are many reasons. And all of those are reasons, and there's probably a lot more. I would caution a few things, though. There's a tendency to want to blame the outside influences. And I find that to be very dangerous. I find the outside influences to be tremendously dangerous. But I found the tendency to blame the outside influences is also dangerous, because we sort of let up on our chinuch, and we say, well, it's the outside influences. Let's just get rid of the outside influences and everything's going to be fine. First of all, practically speaking, it's very hard to get rid of the outside influences, because even if we're successful, our neighbors are not successful, our friends are not successful, their friends are not successful. And the world out there is infiltrating, even if we filter, even if we destroy the devices that we have. So it's very hard. Secondly, the goal is to create a matzav where they want to cooperate with us in keeping away those influences. Let me tell you a little story, which I have no idea whether it ever happened, but I think it brings home a point. They tell the story of a Yerushalmi Jew walking along the street in Haifa, and opposite him was a Chiloni, was a secular Jew, a non-religious Jew, walking in the opposite direction. And as they're about to cross each other's path, they pass a storefront which has extremely inappropriate demonstrations there. And the Yerushalmi, in the quickest movement, puts his hand over his eyes. And the Chiloni is so impressed. He walks up to him and says, tell me, what is it in your life that's so meaningful, that's so fulfilling, that you won't chance to compromise it for a moment of something that everybody else enjoys? And that, I think, is the key. We need our children to be allies in keeping out the negative influences. If they're passionate about the Yiddishkeit, if they understand where it's coming from, if they recognize the benefit of a life of Yiddishkeit, if they've seen the passion and the excitement that we have, and if they realize how it's going to make their quality of life better, how it's going to make them happy, and if our relationship with them is deep and warm and caring and loving and respectful and tight, and if we listen to the issues and try to help deal with them, then I think we're going to develop in them such a deep sense of appreciation of Yiddishkeit that the outside influences will still be there and could still be devastating, but they will certainly work to keep them out as much as possible. They will not want devices, or they will make sure that the devices are properly filtered, or they'll do everything they can to keep that influence out, because they don't want to compromise that excitement that they have. So I think that's a very critical point in this whole discussion. And I think there's one more thing that's also very, very important. Most people that go off the derech lack a relationship with Hashem. Now, many people say, I never heard about relationship with Hashem. Vies mendos, what is that? How do you eat it? What do you talk about relationship with Hashem? but that is a critical factor. I'll never forget, many years ago, I gave a session for a group of men and women, mechanchim, who were leaving Eretz Yisrael to go to Budapest to start the first day school. For 40 years, there hadn't been a day school in Budapest. And they went to start this day school, and I gave a session for them. When I came in, the previous speaker was speaking. He says, make sure, don't mention Hashem, because Hashem has been absent from Budapest in the last 40 years. And when my turn came, I said, I must disagree. Not only should you mention Hashem, you should talk to them about having a relationship with Hashem. And someone asked me, said, what are you going to do if they laugh at you? And I said, I've been talking about relationship with Hashem to non-religious audiences for decades. No one ever laughed. To the contrary, they're jealous. Everybody wants a relationship with the boss. Everybody wants a relationship with the creator. Everyone wants a relationship with the controller, with the master. And interestingly enough, at the end of the first week, the one who was the president of the whole thing, he didn't know about my conversation with his teachers, called me and said, a very cute thing happened the first day of school. There was a 6-year-old girl, and she came home. She said, Mommy, Daddy, guess what? There's a God in the world. And the family rejoiced. So that relationship is critical. In fact, when the Goy came to Hillel and asked him to teach him the whole Torah al regal achas, according to the first pshat in Rashi, he said, the Gemara says, he said, that which is hateful you don't do to your friend. That's the whole Torah. The rest is explanation. I'll go and learn. Rashi says in the first pshat that Chavruch refers to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The essence of Kol HaTorah Kula is not to breach the relationship with Hashem. So I think these are some of the things that can really help to avoid that. And when these things are lacking, sometimes one, sometimes another, yes, sometimes it is trauma, yes, sometimes it is tragedy, but even trauma and tragedy, when there's a baseline, when there's a foundation of a connection and appreciation and a loving relationship with Hashem, then they even have more strength to face tragedy and trauma and challenges. So some ideas about that.
Rabbi Cohen, beautiful. Okay, we're going to start with a live question. Okay, Rabbi Cohen?
Okay.
Hey, you're on.
Okay, first of all, I just want to say thank you to Coach Menachem and everybody else, because it's such an easy, great date night that's always, on every Sunday night. It's informative, it's interesting. Rabbi Cohen, this question's for you. It's really about my kids, because obviously their emunah, I think, is still more developing, but I think also for the adults in my house, it's a good question. I actually read your priority one reader on Bitachon, and we were very moved. And we, as a family, because of whatever was going on, we got very, we started really learning Bitachon, and we talk a lot about it. And it's already for like 2 years. We keep a notebook. We write down, all the times where we had Bitachon, we chose not to worry. We saw the Yad Hashem. We saw everything worked out. We saw the Hashgacha Pratis, and we talk to our kids and we talk to them about it. And they hear us saying, I'm not going to worry. I'm going to have Bitachon. Everything's going to work out. We share with them when it does, right? Piggybacking off of what you just said, it's building a beautiful relationship with Hashem. You're never alone. Hashem is always there. You don't have to worry. You'll see things are going to work out. And I'm a little bit worried because, when you have real bitachon, things work out. But my kids, not necessarily are they able to understand. Like I tell them, well, you have to hope that Hashem is going to help you, and you have to really believe that he's going to help you. And sometimes, like, silly things, like they'll laugh after my husband comes home with Slurpees from them. They'll say, Ma, remember we asked you for Slurpees? You said, no, we were having bitachon, you see? Or they'll say, I really, really want, pizza. And I'm like, my husband will say, okay, so have bitachon, because, we're not getting you pizza. And, 2 minutes later, my brother-in-law will knock at the door as a surprise visit with pizza. Like things that even they said, look what happened. And I'm worried what's going to happen when my kids tell me I was having bitachon for this and it didn't come true. Hashem didn't come through for me. And do they have the maturity to understand, or what am I telling them that they should understand? That the bitachon wasn't real, that you can only have bitachon for your needs. And if, it didn't happen, then it's obviously what you need. I'm curious what the response should be. I know, like, as adults, like we say, well, maybe your bitachon wasn't complete. I'm curious, like, is bitachon something you should be teaching children, stressing children, and how do you safeguard their emunah pshuta, their just emunah in Hashem, that he's there, if they're kind of like playing around with bitachon, if that makes sense.
Wow, it makes a lot of sense. It certainly shows you're really deeply involved in the sugya of bitachon, and wow, it's just a pleasure listening. So I'll tell you what I think. You see, there's a mistake that some people make about Bitachon. The best posuk, and the best, but a posuk that clearly tells us how Bitachon works is David HaMelech in Kapitel Yud Gimel in Tehillim, where he says, "Va'ani b'chastecho botachti yogei libi b'shuasecho." I trusted in your chesed, and therefore, and the Vilna Gaon explains, I know my heart will rejoice in the Yeshua, in the salvation, which means I don't trust that Hashem's going to help me. I trust His chesed. I know everything He does is chesed. I know the love that He has. I know the rachamim that He has. And therefore, that leads me to feel that He's not going to let me down. However, if He does not deliver according to my heart's desire, if I trusted His chesed, then I know that that's a greater chesed. He has something bigger and better in store for me. He knows that if He grants me the thing that I want now, it's going to be a bad thing. It's not going to work the way I want. It's going to, in business, people sometimes, I want this deal. It's the most important deal of my life. And I'm going to have Bitachon, the deal's going to go through. And if deals go through, it'll lead them into bankruptcy. But if you wait a little bit, Hashem has something better in mind, because Hashem knows what you want in your heart. And He will give you the best, not necessarily the way you think it. So I think this is a mistake that people make. We have to let them know the way we come to trusting Hashem that He's going to give us what we want is through the realization that we trust that He's always about chesed and rachamim. Therefore, when He doesn't deliver, a person who's on that level realizes, hey, you know why He's not delivering? Because obviously this was not the best thing for me. Now, it is true that sometimes I didn't have real bitachon, but that's a very hard thing, because they say, well, how do you know? How do you gauge? And they can get a little disillusioned with that. But this is a very simple thing. Hashem always gives us what's best for us. And the bitachon always helps. And if the bitachon is disappointed, it's going to be a schus to get us bigger and better. And we can be quite confident that had we gotten the thing that we really trusted Hashem for, that wouldn't have worked for us. So again, you have to teach them about the chesed Hashem. The way we get to trust Hashem that He's going to give us a Slurpee or a pizza is by recognizing His chesed, and by then feeling, well, I want it so much. And if He doesn't give the Slurpee or the pizza, then I know that that wasn't good for me. Maybe the pizza they made today have some type of a salmonella, and it's going to get sick from it. Maybe the Slurpee has some kind of who knows what, So I think this is the way that you have to look at that. But don't hesitate to teach them about bitachon just because of this possibility. Teach them more about how everything Hashem does is chesed.
Okay, beautiful, Rabbi Cohen. Thank you. Okay, next live question, you're on.
Hey, thank you so much. My question is, what happens when a child disconnects from Yiddishkeit because there was trauma within the home by a family member, and now another family member is trying to reconnect them? How do we deal with the fact that, it came from within?
Yeah, well, you see, within is certainly much more painful and much more devastating than without, there's no question. And the real answer would be to have built a foundation of appreciation that everything Hashem does is always for the good. And that foundation is there before I face difficulty or trauma. And that helps me cope, because I figure out that even though this doesn't make an ounce of sense, and in my mind, I think this is so tragic, and it is, but Hashem, if Hashem lets something happen, then there's a long-term benefit for me. Now, we know that trauma, as dangerous and devastating as it is, oftentimes with the right help, with the right situation, and sometimes with the right background, so that we can't always do after the fact, but people can grow from it beyond where they ever would have achieved. And people have to realize when they go through trauma that yes, it's a test, yes, it's a challenge, yes, it's very painful. We have to let them know that we feel their pain, have to empathize with them, not sympathize, not nebuch, but I feel your pain, we validate your pain, but Hashem has a plan for everything. There's a famous, I don't know if it's so famous, but there's a Tosfos Rid that I like to quote all the time for everyone. He has a Haggadah, and he was a Rishon, and he writes like this. And when it says, we started as idol worshippers, descendants of Terach. So he asks a question. He says, we thank Hashem for taking us out of Mitzrayim. If he wouldn't have put us in, he wouldn't have to take us out. What's the big deal? So he says we started as idolaters, and as such, we never could have been privileged, shuras hadin, in din, to deserve all the gifts of Torah and Shabbos and Yontif and mitzvahs that Hashem wanted to give us. Therefore, he put us in Mitzrayim. He put us through great challenges, and he had rachmanas on us. And through the challenges, he was able to entitle us to get way beyond what we ever could have earned, what we ever could have deserved. And people have to know in life too, that Hashem, in his infinite kindness and his infinite rachamim, sometimes puts us through challenging situations in order to help us grow, in order to help us achieve levels that we couldn't have achieved of connection to him and closeness to him, and in order to be able to give us gifts and rewards and benefits and love and chesed that we never could have deserved. I think these are some of the things that, but a person really to deal with someone, it needs somebody who's adept at this, who knows how to present this, who can really work with them on this. But these are some of the basic ideas which I find can be very helpful to people who've gone through trauma.
If the child didn't have that foundation to begin with.
Well, so then we see it's much harder. It's much like you go into a person who just suffered a loss and they're sitting shiva and you say, wow, this is the best thing that ever happened to you. That's not the time to teach that lesson. Everything Hashem does is really good. You're right, but we have to, if we have no choice, we have to teach that lesson later. We have to teach it gradually, gently, through a lot of gentle, empathetic listening and conversations. And gradually we can help the person to see the opportunity that exists in challenge that can elevate us in greater proximity to Hashem, elevate us as stronger human beings, and allow Hashem to justify giving us gifts that otherwise we never could have deserved.
And if the child is so turned off from Hashem, how do we start that conversation?
How old is the child?
A young teenager.
Well, it could be that you need some outside help for that. Someone who's, more adept and more experienced in doing that. I could, if I have an email address or something, I could send you something to, that might help you to read, or you want to maybe just contact or look on the contact the Priority One office. I'll give you a number, and I'll try to get you something. All right, 516-295-5700.
I'm sorry, was that 516-295?
295-5700.
Thank you so much.
Rabbi Cohen, what you're sharing is, like you mentioned in the beginning, is that's the long-term goal. Eventually, you want them to heal, to come out in a good place, to look back and say, it was painful, but I grew from it. And I think many people want to heal now, like you mentioned.
Healing doesn't happen instantaneously. If you have a cut in your finger, you could heal that with a Band-Aid. But
so it's important to know that it takes a lot of time.
That's right.
Patience and the right help.
That's right, 100%.
Okay, Rabbi Cohen, let's go to another question over here. Did I mute? 1 second. Hi, you're on.
Hi, thanks so much. Okay, what about a child that is around like 11, 12 years old, pre-bar mitzvah, but getting close? He loves learning and seems to have a regular connection, but when it comes to davening, he says, I don't know why, I just don't like to daven. And I don't force it, but I want to know how he's going to have to soon get past that. So how do I, as a parent, help him to get that appreciation, or not, even if he doesn't yet have that appreciation? I know it's hard even for adults to have the appreciation for davening. How do I get him to actually get past that blockage of davening and say it's something I'm going to do anyway, even though I don't like to do it, and hopefully eventually get to where tefillah is supposed to be. But I want to even
Why-
get to that point of where he's going to do it even if he doesn't feel the connection, because he
Why
doesn't
do you
like
think
to.
it? Why do you think he doesn't like to do it?
It just feels like he doesn't understand everything. It feels like it's long. He's just saying words. It's different when he's learning Mishnayos, when he's learning Chumash, when he's learning even Gemara. He understands and he gets a geschmack out of it. He's not getting that out of tefillah. Even when we
100%.
try to come from a different angle of like, okay, so don't say the words. Let's think about who we're talking to. Let's talk to Hashem. Let's talk to a king for a minute. He doesn't want to. He blocks it.
Well, so I think you're right. I mean, the tefillah experience, for the most part, at that age, has been a negative experience in schools because they had to sit there for 40 minutes or 45 minutes or more and either say words that they don't know what they're talking about or fake it or just sit and be bored. And there are a lot of negatives associated with it. And unfortunately, just explaining to them what the words mean has not seemed to do the job. But I think there are a few things. First of all, you have to introduce him to Hashem's Hashkocha Pratis. If he gets attuned to Hashkocha Pratis, then he sees Hashem's active involvement in his life, in the world, and in his life. That motivates him. Well, hey, Hashem gets involved. It's kedai to talk to him. And even if I'm not going to be too happy with the words that the Anshe Knesset Gdola have chosen, but at least I'll start with my own words. I know I can talk to him. I know he responds. Part of the problem with tefillah is also I talk and he doesn't answer. He doesn't talk back. It's a one-way conversation. One-way conversations are very boring. One-way conversations are very frustrating. So when I introduce, Hashem answers. Hashkocha Pratis is the answer. Sometimes terem nikra elecha anenu. Sometimes even answers before. And if he gets into that, so he sees an involvement and a connection with Hashem in his life. I have to tell you a little story. I feel that this story was fundamental and foundational in the development of my children in their connection to Hashem. We were living in the San Fernando Valley. We made a yeshiva there. It wasn't a very easy undertaking. The community wasn't really ready for it. And the financial situation was very, very difficult. And it was a summer's night, 10:30 at night, and my oldest daughter must have been about 8 years old. She was going to go to a day camp. She's going to a day camp, and the next day they're going on a trip. And she asked me for 75 cents. I must admit I didn't have 75 cents. What should I do? Say Tehillim. Okay, she wasn't too happy with the idea. She sat down with her younger sister and they're saying a couple kapitlach Tehillim. And she said, I don't get it. I need the money now. I'm leaving at 7:30 in the morning. What's going to change? The little kid says, maybe somebody will think they have to give you some nonsense. And that was it. She left without the money. She comes back and she says, a friend of hers who had borrowed 75 cents at the Purim carnival. So we're talking at least 4 months prior. And they had forgotten about it completely. That morning wakes up and says, oh, I owe the Cohen girl 75 cents. And she brings it to camp. And what a lesson it was for my kids. Tefillah helps. Hashem listens. He's concerned even for 75 cents. They say Tehillim at 10:30 at night. And Hashem, we lived in the valley, they lived in the city. 10 miles away, Hashem sends a message to a girl that both of them never thought about this for 4 or 5 months and say she should bring the 75 cents to camp. They need those kinds of experiences. And then they see, hey, it's kedai to do tefillah. Then they also have to understand what they're doing with tefillah. What are we praising Hashem? You know, many people ask the question, why is Hashem have such an ego problem? What? Hashem doesn't need our praises. Hashem doesn't need anything. We couldn't give him anything. He needs nothing and we couldn't give him anything. It's all for our benefit. When we praise Hashem, we come to recognize Hashem more and we strengthen our connection with him and we elevate ourselves. And when we ask him, we do the same thing. And Hashem responds to tefillah. And when at the end of Shemona Esrei, they should be told, before they step back, before they say Aseh Leman Shemecha, they should ask personal things in their own language and make it come alive, make it real, make it, it's about life. I mean, tefillah is really the most amazing thing that Hashem has taken, Chazal have developed, using the personal needs that we have as a means of connecting with Hashem. And I think he has to see it in that context. And it's a gradual process. I wouldn't worry. He does have to know. He doesn't have to say everything. And I think even he should know that even after bar mitzvah, there are certain shortcuts after to see exactly what that he could make, because he may be traumatized by so many words for so long. And gradually, and maybe start with a geschmack in one particular kapitel, in one particular, in the first parsha of Shema, in the first bracha of Shemona Esrei, something, and give him some meaning and some understanding, and takes on a whole new, and don't pressure and don't push, which it sounds like you're not doing. It sounds like you're good on that.
Rabbi Cohen, next live question. You're on. Hello?
Hi, could you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi. So based on what someone just asked, I don't know if it's a Dafka question, but it's something that I sort of had to figure out for myself. In my childhood, whatever I asked my parents, whatever my question was, everything was no. Everything was always sort of, the message that I got is that Hashem is here to punish me. Hashem is here to get me. I'm like, hey, we caught you, hooray. And for me, once I got married and I had kids, I realized that's not how I want to raise my kids. And sort of like the poll, but I had no clue what is the right way for me to show my kids, what is the correct way for me to sort of bring in, having them in Hashem and realizing that whatever Hashem does is for the good. Because a lot of things in my life, I still struggle. Like, God, it really doesn't make sense. Why am I going through this or that struggle? And it came to a point where I realized, let me just try. And if my son asked for something, based on my childhood, it's so much easier to say no and be firm. And I realized, let me change it for them. And I just said yes. And it came to a point where I said, if not for God, I wouldn't have been able to get you, let's say, in the event of, let's say, a Slurpee, a pizza, or in my son's situation, let's say he was dying to have a Nintendo. So I said, if not for God giving us X, Y, Z, or money or a job or something, then I wouldn't be able to get that for you. And it came to a point where my son was looking for some things like, Hashem, help, I should find it. I know you're here for me, but make sure I find what I'm looking for. And for me, that was such a strong sort of message from God to show me that what I am doing is right. So far, it's working. And I don't know, that's just what I wanted to say. Thank you so much. And again, thank you for everything, the weekly calls. It's my sitting down, relaxing on the couch on Sunday night and just listening and gaining inspiration and all. So thank you so much.
Well, I know you didn't ask a question, but I'd just like to say you're definitely doing the right thing. And they have to understand Hashem is good. Hashem is Molei Chesed V'Rachamim. He created the world only to do Chesed. He has no gain from this world, no benefit from this world. When we say we're here to serve Hashem, it doesn't mean to serve him breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It doesn't mean to take care of his needs. It means to grow ourselves from the process of doing mitzvahs and refining our character and making us better people and earning the good and the reward and the kindness that Hashem wants to give us. And that has to be emphasized again and again and again, as you seem to be doing. And that's great. Keep it up.
Rabbi Cohen, what would you recommend for people who grew up this way? They don't have the positive relationship with Hashem, and they all they have is the negative. Where would they start? What are some?
Well, look, there is so much today available on Torah Anytime or other. I'm not familiar with all the all the media connections that they have out there, or the written word. There's so much written about it. They have to begin a whole different focus on recognizing Hashem is all about chesed and rachamim. He only created the world to do chesed. All he wants for us is chesed. He's concerned about the smallest and the largest and everything in between concerns of our life, and to bang that into their own heads so that they can then give it to their children. There are books on that. There are lectures on that. There's about Bitachon and about midos, about Hashem's midos, about connection to Hashem. There's so much on that today. I mean, and that's really what they have to do. And it's really a process of education for the parents in order to get to that point. But if they continue with that negative approach, this is a terrible, terrible mistake. Terrible mistake. We have a loving God who loves Klal Yisrael no matter how badly we act. And the whole Shir HaShirim is built on. They should learn Shir HaShirim with Rashi to see the whole Shir Hashirim is built on how much Hashem loves Klal Yisrael, despite the inappropriateness of our actions. And they have to learn that lesson and internalize it deeply and well.
But then they have some negative experiences. They're not happy about this, Hashem does this, and they're
Okay, so if they can't work out the negative experiences, they have to make an appointment with you. I mean, that's life. They need help. Okay, but a lot of people can work out the negative experiences if they just see the positive love of Hashem.
Okay, Rabbi Cohen, beautiful. Let's go to some of the questions. We have a lot of questions over here. Let's try to cover ground, if that's okay. Okay, my 12-year-old misbehaves and doesn't listen, and I need to constantly try to talk to him and recenter him. I feel that my love for him has slowly faded away. How do I understand the concept of unconditional love?
Well, first of all, Hashem loves us unconditionally, and we have to realize that. And if you study, as I mentioned, Shir Hashirim, or so many other sources, we find that despite Yisrael, apathy, Yisrael, who, whatever it is, Hashem's love is because inside there's greatness. And you have to focus on the internal. Klal Yisrael is compared, the Medrash says, to an olive. The olive has the most precious oil, but it's the hardest to get out. So too the Jew. Inside, he has this greatness. But sometimes it's very difficult. It takes a lot of procedure, a lot of squeezing, a lot of putting up with, and until it comes out. And the way to do that is close your eyes. Don't look at what it looks like. Don't listen to what they're saying. Just squeeze it out. Just realize that the goodness is there. And we have to focus and conceptualize that goodness. That's number one. Number two, the love of a parent for a child is natural. Let that natural love flow. It shouldn't be conditional. It's not conditional. What they do, and sometimes what they do, they're going through a stage. Sometimes what they do is because I know people who do bad things because they're good, because they're not comfortable with, I don't want to give examples publicly. I think it's a little bit, tricky, but there are people that are so good and sometimes they can't bring themselves to do the right thing for the right reason, so they don't do it. And they mean well. Find the good in everybody. Every child is good. Everyone has that good inside. And look for it and discover it and then bring it out. And realize something else. If you look at them negatively, you will just reinforce the negative behavior. If you start looking at them positively, you'll do something else. When you look at a person, even when they're misbehaving, and you show them respect, and you show them love, then not only will you love them more, but you'll be changing them. You'll be turning them around. And that's really what it's all about. So I think that's the best eitzah, to focus on that and recognize that. And, we acted appropriately, and Hashem loves us. We have to deal with our children that way too. And they're children. And what do we want from them? And something, we probably have a share in the responsibility for them not acting properly. And the world that they're growing up in certainly has a major share. And maybe we didn't send them to the right yeshiva or to have the right influence. So we have to take that into consideration and just focus on the good, focus on the good, focus on the good. And you'll find that love that you find for the good nakuda spreads to the entire child, and you will turn him around.
Beautiful. Okay, you're on live. Next live question.
Okay, you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so first I want to say that thank you for everything. And I didn't answer the poll because my answers weren't there. But I remember what I always remember about Chinuch is, I remember as a child, we had a neighbor, I probably was a teenager already. We had a neighbor who, unfortunately, a number of their children were not following the path of their parents. And one of my siblings said something like, boy, what did their parents do? There's very few times I remember my father getting very upset and passionate. And he told us, raising children is siyata d'shmaya. You need to daven, daven, and daven, and the rest is up to Hashem. You do your best and from Hashem. And then I learned whatever, and then what I try to do is set by example for my kids. And hopefully, Baruch Hashem, I have very good kids. And for the second question, I think a lot of it is acceptance. Accepting our children for who they are. And accepting them the way they are and who they are, and then guiding them with that. Saying that, I struggle a lot because although I'm in a marriage, I'm a single parent. My husband here's my question. My husband is not, he's floundering a lot now. And I never know what to do with my kids, because as much as I might not agree with a lot of things in his life, he's still my kid's parent. He's still their father. And he still comes to the Shabbos table. So he's still there and he still asks Parsha questions. But I have an issue, let's say, Erev Shabbos, I went into the office to put my phone away for Shabbos, and my husband was putting on tefillin, and I was going to Ben Shlicht, and my 15-year-old daughter came to me and said, "Why stop putting on tefillin now? Like, why now?" And I was really stuck. What do I answer when they know he's doing things that we don't accept in the house, and it's not what we want for our kids? And it's not what he wants for them either. He's just struggling now. So how do I answer my children and still be able to have them show respect to him?
Wow. Okay, that's a rough one. First of all, if he's struggling, we have to try to get him help. That's very important, because today there's a lot of people like that. That scenario is unfortunately very, very, very familiar. Secondly, Baruch Hashem, he's putting on tefillin before the Shkia. He feels he wants to do that, so he's, nobody's forcing him. The children are not. So he's there. He's still there. He's having certain struggles, so he needs help with the struggles. And if depending on the age of the kids, I think they have to understand that we're all human. We all have our struggles. Some people have certain struggles. Some people have other struggles. Some people go through certain stages. And I think it does not diminish from the respect. He's dealing with it. But I think it's important, if he's dealing with it, it's so much easier, because he has issues that he's dealing with right now. And Bez Hashem, everything's going to be fine. But he should be dealing with it, and you should try to help him in any way that he can to deal with it. But the kids have to learn that everybody has their challenges. Some people have some challenges, some people have others, some people bigger, some people smaller, and it does not have to diminish at all from the respect that we have for them. But all of this only makes sense if you get him some help for his challenges. And there is help. And we've helped so many people in that situation. People, adults who are getting a little bit shaky, a little bit turned off, a little bit apathetic. There's help out there for them.
I just want to add, like, it could be very hard, the acceptance piece she mentioned, for the kids, to accept the kids, to be able to accept the spouse can be hard. And like she mentioned, it's hard. What should I tell the kids? But internally, it starts with acceptance, because like you mentioned, struggle is a struggle. And if he's struggling and needs the help, but till he gets the help, that's the acceptance piece of where he is. Another question that came in, I'll read it in a second. Here. My son is a regular boy in a good yeshiva, and Baruch Hashem, he's not misbehaving. However, it seems that my son and his friends are just going through the motions without excitement in Yiddishkeit. There's almost no drive or excitement. Why is it? He does go to a regular good yeshiva. Why is it that he feels this way? And what can I do to help the situation?
Oy, that's a magefa today. There's a lot of apathy going around. It's a very serious problem. It has to be addressed on many levels. When they don't feel that they're getting it in the yeshiva, the home definitely has to step in and work to create much more excitement and passion for Yiddishkeit. it requires a lot of conversation and maybe explanation. And why are you doing things? Sometimes the apathy is because I don't know what I'm doing. It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know what the point is. Many people have no idea. Many people still think that we're serving Hashem because he is needy, because that's what an Eved does, service. What does it mean to serve? That's insane. But they have wrong concepts, and we have to educate them. And a lot of them are getting it in the yeshiva. They're not paying too much attention. A lot of them may not be getting it in the yeshiva, and we have to get it at home. Also, we do have to see to it that the both parents and rebbeim, I mean, this is the thing that we are pushing all the time, should be better prepared for these issues. Training for mechanchim, training for parents to understand how to really inspire these things in kids. It doesn't happen with a little speech. It doesn't happen with a little book. It's an ongoing process. So I think we have to compensate for that. Seeing the passion in us is going to help. Sometimes connecting such a child with a mentor who's a little bit older, who's passionate about the Yiddishkeit, and he or she can identify with that mentor. Sometimes then they catch the passion, they catch the fervor, they catch the flame from them. So that's another possibility. But oftentimes it's about understanding what's in it for me. The more they understand how they're to benefit, the more they see a benevolent the more they see a world that was created only for chesed, the more they see that all the mitzvahs benefit them and make them a better human being and make them feel better about themselves and make them more happy. Those are the things that generate passion. So, but it's a process. It's not going to happen overnight. But these are some of the things that we can do to make it happen. And I do think an outside mentor can be very, very helpful if you find one that's excited about the Yiddishkeit and a couple of years older they can identify with. I know when I came out to Los Angeles, I came with a group of young yeshiva bachrim. And after a couple of months, I realized they were having much more hashpah than I was. And I was a little bit taken aback by it. And then I realized they're a couple of years older. They play ball with them. They say that. That's the kind of thing. And they identified with them and they made a major difference in their lives. So I think that those are some of the things that could be helpful. Also, they probably have no concept of having a relationship with Hashem. It's a foreign concept to so many today. If you develop a relationship with Hashem, you can't not be passionate. It's a passionate relationship. Hashem loves me intensely. I love him. I appreciate everything he gives me. I see his hashkocha protis. I see his involvement in every detail of my life. These are things that inspire passion. And I think that understanding why they're doing things, appreciating the benefits of the Yiddishkeit, understanding where it all comes from, and having a mentor that models it, and having parents that model it, and hopefully friends, I think that can be compensated for, if not completely, but certainly to a great extent.
Beautiful, Rabbi Cohen. It's another question over here. It's similar, but it's a little bit more explaining the question. Baruch Hashem have a family of 6 and try very hard to instill them the Yiddishkeit and Yiddish Simchas L'chaim on Shabbosim, Yom Tovim. But I feel like we're losing the battle with the outside world because they don't really get excited with the things that we have to share. They're busy excitement with all the gadgets and all the social medias and the cars and the PJs, the private jets, and all that type of stuff is more exciting. Do you really think that exciting our children about Yiddishkeit can overcome the glaring temptation of this world? And if so, how do we do that?
Okay, that's a very key question. Number one, the answer is I do really think that it can overcome. I don't think it's going to happen in an event. It's a process. It's going to take time. It has to develop this excitement, this counter excitement for Yiddishkeit, which can counter what's going on out there. I think without putting down their friends or anyone specifically, they do have to see that this world, the pleasures of this world, the excitement of this world, leave people feeling very empty because the suicide rate is up, and the substance abuse rate is up, and the divorce rate is up, and the rates that mental health professionals can charge is up, and the world is not a happy place. And it's because of the fact that everyone is pursuing all of this pleasure. Pleasure is antithetical to happiness. Happiness is feeling good about myself. all the excitement and the pleasure that I need from the outside sends a negative message, says, I'm trash. I don't feel good about myself. I need all of that just to get through the day. That's part of the educational process. And then they do have to see that they have to be excited. They have to, some kids, if they're intellectual, they have to be challenged in learning. Other that are emotional can be sensitized to some of the beauty and the depth and the sensitive human insights that we find in Torah. It's a whole process. And again, a mentor can be very helpful for this process. Parents who model this can be very helpful for this process. Speaking and making sure that Rebbeim are also on board with this process, and it becomes a total surrounding of aspects of this process can make a difference. I believe it's a terrible mistake to surrender to the outside influences and say the Torah and the Yiddishkeit and the life of Torah and mitzvahs cannot compete with that. It can compete, it can decimate that, because that doesn't leave anything. Now, the good news is like this. When kids have been exposed to the outside, and sooner on in life than in years gone by, they recognize that there's nothing there. There's nothing that's going to make them happy. It takes a while, and we have to be patient. But eventually they will discover that doesn't bring me happiness. I'm miserable. What am I doing? More and more and more and more. Another one. I need another one. I need an upgrade. I need another one. What's the gvul? And the Torah says, doesn't make me feel good about myself. When I make myself into a better person, when I do chesed, when I connect with Hashem, I feel like a better human being. And that stuff sticks with me. The pleasure is gone. And at best, you have the memory of a pleasure. When I elevate myself through something meaning and spiritual, I feel a different person. I remain at that elevated level forevermore.
So you're saying it starts with the adults in the room, with the parents, with the Menachem.
That's right. They have to see it, and they have to know how to. We have to know how to point it. Look at the world today. Is this a happy world we live in? Everything's accessible. There was never a generation in all of human history that had access to so much pleasure and is so sick and miserable. They have to see that. Be careful not to knock anything too close to home, but just, don't say, you see how miserable you are. Nobody wants to hear that. But show the next one. Like, look.
But kids don't see that.
No, but it can be pointed out to them. They can see it because deep down they know that this thrill that I had is not satisfying. It's temporary pleasurable, but it's not satisfying. They know something real is satisfying. When I do something that has meaning, that has truth, that has a connection to Hashem, that satisfies. When I do a chesed, that satisfies. When I just, all these pleasures, that doesn't do very much for me.
Very nice. Okay. We are starting off on our journey. Our oldest is 5 Kanai Nahara. What advice can you give us, the first steps for Chinuch, so we can start on the right path?
Wow. Okay. I think that, again, the basics that we said before, Chinuch is a long-term process. Go for the long term. You want to keep the goal in mind rather than the specific stage that you're at. I think love is extremely important. I think making them feel good about themselves is extremely important. Showing them respect. Even they say little kids, give them a choice. You want to wear this today, you want to wear that today. That makes the kid feel good about himself or herself, because I'm respected. I can make a choice. Give them as many choices as they can and let them choose. And, within reason, you provide the different choices, but within reason, then they can become, they feel good about themselves. Validate them. When you bring out the strengths, point out the strengths. Don't ever tell them about the potential that they have. Because potential, when you talk to someone about potential, say, you're really trash, but you have potential. Show them the actual that they have. When they do something good, recognize it, reward it, compliment it, pay attention to it, and don't put them down. Uplift them. When the Alter from Slabotka met Rabbi Yisrael Salanter before he started the Slabotka yeshiva, he asked him, what's the derech to make a yeshiva? He told him one pasuk. L'hachis nefesh shvolim, l'hachis leiv nitkoim. uplift the downtrodden, uplift the brokenhearted. It's all about uplifting. Don't put down. Please lift up. That makes all the difference in the world. And then there's so many of the other things that we spoke about, I think, are also relevant. And we have an interesting book about being amazing parenting, raising amazing children. If you wish, you can call the Priority One office or contact priority-1.org. You can download it from the website.
Okay, Rabbi Cohen, a few people are texting this question. Say, how do I, the basic question I'm getting from a few people is basically the kids, when they're getting older into the teenage years, right? They're getting very magushim with just the general, with what they see out there. There's a lot of, even in our society, there's a lot of gashmias, whether it's the lavish kadeshim or these fabulous, wonderful trips, or the unlimited amount of, buying, whatever it is. And, you don't want to forget if you have the money, you don't have the money. Let's leave that aside. But you don't want to, so in one sense, you want to show them normalcy and, what normal is. And in another sense, everybody's doing this, like a kid comes home and says, where are we going for Hanukkah? We're going to Florida or California? Where we're going. That's the sense. How do we Chanukah our kids this? And it seems like even in the core society, this is becoming more and more standard.
Yes, it is a problem. And I would say that they do have to learn that we can't do everything, and we don't believe we should be doing everything that everybody else does. But they do have to have alternatives that are going to make them happy. If everyone is going to Florida for Hanukkah and they can take a local couple of days of exciting things to do, then in the midst of all the excitement, they're going to forget the jealousy that they had about the other thing. So we have to address it. We can't just ignore it. We can't just lecture against it. But we have to also explain that the unbridled pursuit of just what's more exciting and what's more expensive and what's more this doesn't really bring anyone happiness anyway. Because these people are never happy because they always want more and more and more and more and more. So I think letting them know that, yes, look, we have a good time. We also go Hanukkah. If you ignore them, everyone's going on vacation, you're having them sitting home, staring at the four walls or fighting with each other, then you're going to have a problem. So I think it's just a question of finding modest, moderate, reasonable, appropriate substitutes where they can also have a good time. Everybody knows that there are simple things that can have. I just heard about something. I have a cheshik myself. I'm an old man. They have this virtual experience that they rent glasses or gargle. I don't know what they do. And Cholamoid, my grandchildren had it. It was the most amazing thing in the world. They were all over the world. They were on the moon. They were here. They were there. And just like there are things that people can do that can be very exciting. So don't negate it completely, but it's not a religion.
Okay.
There's more to life than just this stuff.
Okay, this goes into the next question a little bit. My kids are very negative. Whatever I say, they roll their eyes. Another speech. I'm not sure where I went wrong or what I could do to turn it around, the environment to some positivity.
Well, first of all, stop making speeches. They don't want to hear speeches without listening to speeches. Sometimes we feel it's our responsibility to make the speech, but we're not supposed to say something that won't be heard, that won't be understood, that won't be accepted. So we shouldn't make speeches. Work on the relationship with them. Work on appreciating them, respecting them, doing things with them without any judgmental. I didn't use the word, and I should have before. Don't be judgmental. Speeches are usually judgmental. I'm judging you in a negative way, therefore I'm making a speech. Judge me in a positive way. Look for the positive. Find the good that I do. There won't be no need for speeches. Find the things to compliment. Some educators even have a formula, so many compliments to one criticism. I don't like formulas, but yes, compliment them. Make them feel good about themselves and stop the speeches. And don't be judgmental and appreciate who they are and cut them some slack. And even if you don't get everything that you want, in the long run, you'll get much more of what you want.
Here's another question. All my older kids struggle in school, and one of my kids went off the derech and now struggling a lot. My youngest, 9, she says already she hates school. How do I help her have a positive experience, even though school is so hard and she's not enjoying learning in school. She has learning difficulties. How do I teach her that her older sister's rebellion are not ideal or healthy, safe responses?
Well, you see, it's a big problem. They're really separate issues. I think the first thing is to deal with her issues. Learning disabilities, there are resource rooms, there are special tutors, special educators that can deal with that. And that's something they have to do. They have to find a way that she should have a meaningful and enjoyable learning experience despite the learning disabilities. Oftentimes it can be intellectual without textual. A lot of the learning disabilities are textually oriented, but intellectually they can be very smart, and give them fulfillment. Let them get excited about something. Yes, sometimes you're going to have to provide it out of school, but it's worth it, because then once they have positive experiences, you have what to deal with. In terms of the older one, I think you have to just, as they get older, explain to them, they had some negative experiences and it turned them off and upset them. And they're going through a stage, and hopefully they'll be able to work their way back. Deep down, they want to come back. They want to be like the rest of the family, and hopefully they'll work it out. That's, I think, simply put, the best approach. May I excuse myself for a moment?
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Okay.
Take your time. So Menachem, so a good word.
Let's go. Let's make Chazar Sashir.
No, Chazrat. Bottom line, what do we need to do?
Definition of unconditional love. Like we mentioned before, the lady mentioned about acceptance. To accept your kids, and even harder to accept your spouse, and the hardest is to accept yourself. And not everybody understands, but to really accept your child when they don't behave, there are some triggers that it triggers you. My child doesn't behave, I can't have them do it. And then it brings up a lot of how you feel, how the adult, the parent feels. And it's something that takes time and a lot of not sure if it's experience or to understand what it really means. Because most people, if I ask them, do you accept yourself? They say, sure, why not? But to really accept yourself, could you tell me some of your flaws? What are your, what are the positive traits about yourself? Most people, they don't want to talk about themselves. They'll be mechanech their kids, they'll do their best, but I am who I am already, and let's not talk about me. So it is very important, self-acceptance. And I'll even take it to the next level, radical self-acceptance. Radical means no matter what, even if you have things that are wrong, the only way you can continue is only if you accept yourself. So how do you understand it? Usher.
I think it's an avoider. That's what I think it is.
So what do? What's practical?
Practical.
Somebody's asking what's practical idea. You're starting the journey like we had before the question, starting off your journey, and you want to know what you should do. And Rabbi Cohen said he doesn't like to say numbers. They say 9 to 1, 9 should be positive, 1 negative. Whatever the story is, the main thing is ask your child where you can see it. How does your child feel? Whether it's around you, how do they feel about themselves? How do they feel about themselves in school? What mood do they come home? It boils down to how they feel. If they feel positive about themselves, you can talk. But if they feel negative, whatever they're going to say is going to go in one ear and out the other ear. And the same thing is about yourself. You have to be able to tell yourself positives about yourself. And the only way you're going to grow is if you can continue positive. Somebody asked me, what's the first step they should do to connect to their kids? Usha, what would you say? The first step?
First step probably is to sit down with them and go out with them and spend time with them and have just it's called celebration of life, just because who they are, not what they're doing or anything, just to
Take them out.
with them to build a that type of relationship, to start up again.
Right.
I just got emailed a very good question. It's a tough
Sorry
one.
about that. Okay.
You ready for the tough questions? Not
Oh, the tough questions are first coming. I thought they
the
came.
first time. That was just like the warm up. That was like like the dips in the challah. Now we're getting to the main course.
Okay.
Somebody just emailed me. When I raised my children, I made food. Everyone had help, clean home. I did everything the best I could. Maybe I wasn't the most connected or the best, emotional, like we spoke about, emotional neglect. But the bottom line, he said, now that the kids are married and she didn't work so hard in the relationships, the distance I feel from my married children is very painful. What should I do now that after I already married off my kids and I already went through the process and I don't know the right word, I didn't do it the way Rabbi Cohen is discussing and Rabbi Cohen, I'm sure you're familiar, there are a lot of groups of parents that the kids are very disconnected from them after marriage. So like, what does a parent do in those situations where, they're listening, they realize, and now they want to reconnect or whatever?
Okay. First of all, the first Shalom Aleichem in reconnecting is an apology. I realize I made a mistake. I made mistakes. I realize now, unfortunately, it's late, but it's not too late. It's never too late. And I want to make up for it. And you sit down. The best thing is you arrange to go out to lunch or something, with each one over a nice meal that you pay for. Communications usually open up, the lines of communication open up much more. And to talk about how, I made terrible mistakes. I feel so bad. I realize now, I didn't realize, but now I do. And I just wish I could do it all over again. I can't do it all over again, but maybe we can, and you may be rejected in the first meeting and you come back again a little while later. It may be rejected again, because I'll tell you one thing. There's no question that your married children, despite the fact that they're married and hopefully happily married, they still crave a relationship with their parents. They still crave the parents' recognition, the parents, being proud of them and validating them. They crave it. Everybody craves it. It's a terrible mistake that some people make, that they think, well, if they don't have a good relationship, let's just cut off ties. No, you can't do that. I tell people, my father, Zechreno Livrocha, passed away. He was almost 95 years old. And I didn't realize how dependent I was on his approval until after he passed away. Everybody needs that. Everybody wants that. And you have that going for you. But when you come in with an apology, and not just maybe I did something that I shouldn't have done. No, I made big mistakes, maybe even delineate some of the mistakes. And I beg your forgiveness, and I want to reconstruct the relationship. Oftentimes, over a period of time, that can help. And sometimes you have to shower them with help or with gifts or with constant phone calls or with taking a special interest, or if they tell you something about one of their kids, to follow up the next day with a phone call and to show that you really care and that you're really involved. But it can be done. I would not give up hope. It's been done many times before. It's within reach, but it starts with the words, I'm sorry.
Very good. Here's an interesting one. I grew up in a very disciplinarian home where there were no discussions with my parents. I always followed what I was told. Now with my kids, I try doing the same. My wife tells me it doesn't work with today's kids. My question is, number one, isn't that the right way? Number two, if not, how do I change? Or what's the other way?
First of all, Shlomo HaMelech, the wisest of all men, said, Chanoich lanar al pi darkoi, which means not even al pi darkom, not even al pi derech of the generation, but each individual. And certainly today, the generation and the vast majority of individuals do not respond well to this army sergeant like disciplinarian. It just doesn't work today. It's not in vogue in the society. It's actually unheard of. We live in a Hefgewelt, and it's too far remote from anything that's going on today, and it's not going to work. So that has to change. That's not the right way. The right way to be mechanech is al pi darkoi, is according to the derech of each individual, according to the times, according to the situation. And today that does not work. So as far as I'm concerned, there's no question about it. Now, what can you do to change? The best formula that we know of change is what was advocated by Rabbi Shaya Cohen, and that's Liber Amusa. Liber Amusa is made up of 3 parts. There's the Chochmas Amusa, to study about why this change is so important and why that is not the right approach. There's Musa B'Spailus, to internalize the intellectual understanding that you have into your heart. Focus on it. Picture yourself doing the good things, the non-disciplinary approach, and try to make it part of, yes, I see myself doing it. It can be done, and focus on it and try to emotionalize that realization. And third, he says, Chinuch Hamusa, actions. Every time you act in a non-disciplinary way, you've strengthened your commitment to your ability to be a less disciplinarian each and every time. And gradually, again, everything else in life is a process, not an event. It's not going to happen overnight. You can't just snap your fingers and say, I'm no longer disciplinary bent. But if I work on it and I focus on it, I study why it's not the best way today, and I try to internalize it with an emotional message, and I do act after act after act, which goes against that approach, I think things can change.
Okay, Rabbi Cohen, a few more questions. Okay, Rabbi Cohen?
I'm here. I have nothing else to do, nothing else doing tonight.
Okay, this is a girl this is an email from a 15-year-old girl. I'm 15 years old. I'm a 15-year-old girl in a regular school. I'm having a very hard time in school. I have no interest in the material that they teach and have no connection with any of the teachers. I feel like I'm just plotzing. I really can't take it anymore. I feel numb. I don't know what my options are. I tell my parents, but they shrug me off. I don't know what they could do about it, but I feel like there's no one out there to help me. Please, do you have any solutions for me? And what could I tell my parents so they should understand my feelings?
Oy, oy, oy. The truth is, the situation is complex, and there's really not enough information that I know, and I don't want to pry to get any more information on this. But I would say that the first thing should be identify in your school or in your community a teacher or an adult who's savvy and understands, who might be able to that you can confide in, that would understand your situation and that would take an interest in you. There's no doubt that, I don't know what school you're in, but there's no doubt that there's a teacher on staff there, that if you will confide in that teacher and tell that teacher this is the way you feel, that teacher will be, there is someone, I don't know who, will be sympathetic to this and try to help you. So that's number one. Don't give up just because on the surface it seems that nobody is really involved and nobody really cares, and they didn't step up to forge a relationship with you. That doesn't mean it can't happen. So that's number one. Such a relationship with a caring and savvy adult is, I think, critical and must be had. Then, if you can bring such a person into your court, so to speak, then that person maybe can help you to speak to your parents. Because if there's an adult out there that understands this, then I think that they might be able to educate and to, or at least explain to your parents the way you're feeling and start the process of reconnecting and the healing. Once your parents understand a little bit what you're going through, I'm sure they're good and loving parents. They will come on board to try to do whatever they can. But I think it starts with identifying someone in school that can feel your problem, feel your pain, and try to help you to deal with it. It's very unfortunate that you don't like school, you're not doing well, you don't enjoy it. Hopefully this can come to. I would like to make a statement which I think is very, very critical. Chinuch, whether it's from parent to child or from teacher or principal to child or to student or to adult, is be'ikar dependent upon the relationship. If there's a good relationship, then there's a conduit to communicate and to give values and to influence and to guide and to inspire and to uplift. When it depends on, there has to be a real relationship. And a relationship is not something like you say good morning and you say good afternoon, or you say good Shabbos, or you say, how was your Shabbos? A relationship is a relationship with love, with friendship, with respect, with empathy, with connection, with hiskashrus, and that is critical. And I think you must forge such a relationship with an adult who is knowledgeable enough to help you in that. And I think that would be the first step, and that would lead you to your parents, and hopefully then you could start putting things together. And with such a relationship, especially if it could be someone who's a direct teacher of yours, it'll start developing the process of wanting to learn and getting more into the learning and appreciating and enjoying learning. Believe it or not, learning which is unenjoyable is often in a large measure a factor of my lack of relationship with the teacher. And when there is a relationship with that teacher, the learning is on a different level.
Rabbi Cohen, I'm just wondering if, let's say, the parents are on this program listening, what could you tell these parents when their daughter comes to them and tells them this, and they shrug it off because probably they don't know what in the world, where should they start? What can you tell these parents? Where should they start?
Well,
deal with it.
You know, like I mentioned earlier on, the three most important things that parents could do is listen and listen and listen. Let them listen with an open mind and an open heart, and let them realize that what kids say today is very serious. The kids today are very smart. Forgive me, and I hope it doesn't turn off all your listeners, but most kids are smarter than their parents. And the parents shouldn't be offended because they got the smarts from you. But they're very smart and they're very savvy. And listen to them and see what they're saying. And then open your heart and your mind and say, hey, what can we do to help you? And everybody needs help and everybody can be helped. But it's a question of recognizing that there is an issue and then figuring out they should go to a professional. They should give me a call. They should do something. I don't know what they should do. They should call you, but they should do something. What?
Reach out for help.
Reach out for help. That's, today there's nothing. It's very fashionable to get help today. It's not embarrassing anymore. In my day, 50 years ago, they give out. That's bizyonis. No, today it's a busha chlim if you don't have two therapists, at least.
Yeah. Here's another question. My son is Baruch Hashem, a good boy. He did well in school and he's now 24 in Shidduchim. Has become more lax with his Yiddishkeit and the way he dresses. Why does it seem that as soon as many young adults finish yeshiva, when they're in their low mid-20s, they become much more lax in their dress and behavior? How can I view this properly as the parents?
Well, to view it is easy. What to do about it is hard. View it is very simple. When people are doing things because everybody else is doing it, and because there's peer pressure, or because there's adult pressure, or whatever the pressure is, when the pressure stops, then a lot of the behavior is shed. It's just a fact of life. And that's why pressure is not a very good teacher, and pressure is not a very good communicator of values and of commitments and of a way of life. But that's what's been happening. So they're under pressure, and I'm not under pressure anymore. Now I'm free. I do what I want, and that's that's the phenomenon. What can be done about it? Again, nagging and arguing, and this is just going to make it worse. I think that at this point, when they're 24 years old, they have to sit back and hope that they have a mentor or a Rebbe or someone, or maybe to help orchestrate that, who can work with them. We have in our community, we have a alumni of the yeshiva who happen to be working, have a kiddush every Shabbos, and they go there to speak, and they're looking to be mechazik themselves, and they have to find someone who can, usually these people had a Rebbe. If they had a kesher with a Rebbe, then that Rebbe may be activated. If they didn't, maybe get someone else, somebody who could get in there, but that's what they need. And the Rebbe has to be skilled enough to inspire, not to, well, the Rebbe already, they're not in the school, so you won't have to pressure them, just to inspire them. And that's what they need. They have to substitute for that which they did under pressure to become motivated to do it with inspiration, with meaning, with understanding and appreciation.
A 24-year-old is already on their own. Would you recommend the parents get involved, or
I don't know. Parents are oftentimes not the ones to get involved, but there must be a Rebbe. I mean, look, how many times a parent, the 24-year-old, for anybody, somebody has a problem. So a savvy person will call the right person and orchestrate a connection. Say, listen, do me a favor, he used to be a Talmud. He loved you when he was in your shir. He loved you when he was this. Give him a call, see how he's doing. Maybe you can strike up a relationship with him. Do me a favor. He's a little bit of a lost soul right now. He's getting a little bit whatever. And most Rebbeim, or many Rebbeim, especially if they had a relationship, will be very happy to do that. And to encourage that and to see that such a thing happens. Otherwise there's very little parents can do except to pray. That's always the way.
Rabbi Cohen. Somebody sent in a question, came in from a group chat of somebody. Basically, there's another dimension here that hasn't been addressed. Sometimes children from divorce homes seem to struggle with their own identity because they naturally feel a rift between their own parents who are not living together anymore. Is there any way to alleviate the emotional suffering the child feels? How could the parents assure that the child, that they are whole or okay? So basically, after divorce, the parents, I'm assuming, are trying to, put together the child. What could they do to give them more chizik to alleviate some of that?
Okay, so first of all, unfortunately, a single parent really has to be a double parent. They have to really sometimes step in to fill the role of two parents. And yes, if there's two parents, then they'll be filling the role of four parents. But we have to compensate a lot. Normally when a job would be divided between the mother and the father, the single parent has to be able to do it, single-handedly. Of course, it's well known that the alternative, the other spouse, the former spouse, should also be encouraged to have an active role in the life of the child, because the child needs that, unless under the most exceptional circumstances where there's a danger or there's an evil or there's something very, very terrible there. But otherwise, to encourage such a relationship is important. So they're getting it, at least they're getting, not together, but at least they're getting something. Then there's a, I forget what it's called. There are organizations, but there's one,
Talking about the one from divorce that they helped.
What is it called? My
stepfamily. It's called something. My stepfamily.
What?
It's a Muncie.
No, they have it here. We have a branch here in the 5 towns.
My extended family, maybe.
My extended family, something like that. So those very mentors, a couple of years older, who could spend time with them, who could take an interest in them, especially if it's one-on-one, can be very, very helpful. Because then that mentor steps in and fills that role that the other parent is that may be missing in the context, and then again, their relationship with Hashem has to be nurtured, and they have to hear. And I know it's hard to swallow that although this is a terrible, terrible thing, it is an opportunity for them to grow beyond what they ever could have become. And Hashem has a plan for them through this, to reach heights and accomplishments and benefits and achievements that they never could have accomplished. And the rationale is very simple, because when things are going well, you just coast. When you're going against opposition, you fight, you work hard, you push. And therefore, they should see this as a challenge, and it can really lead them to new places, and also to appreciate that Hashem is involved in their lives, and Hashem loves them. And even when things like this happen, ultimately, Hashem brings good about with it, through it, because of it. And all these things together, I think, can help to ease that pain.
Okay, here's another question. My 13-year-old is struggling in school. We are trying to get the help he needs, but he's friends with boys that are really pulling him down. Doesn't want to hear from us when we bring up the topic. And I also feel like I can't take away his friends from him. What do we do?
Yeah, very, very difficult. You're right that you can't take away the friends. You certainly can't put down the friends. You just turn him off more. What I think what you have to do, though, first of all, if he's struggling in school, you have to, again, get him some type of outside help, whether it's a mentor, whether it's a tutor, whether it's both. But in terms of friends, you have to try to orchestrate some good friendships also. Again, we have to be social engineers for our children. And we have to identify some kids and invite them to the house. And you got to be smart about it, because I'm not interested in that nerd. I'm not interested in that. You have to be. But we find out kids in the class that are good kids and that you get with it, and a kid can enjoy. And sometimes you'll even find that there's a leader in the class who is very, very influential and might really be in a position to help this kid, and you can get that child to spend a little time with him. Sometimes you have to get an outside mentor. Sometimes you have to pay for it, but we can't give up. We can't give up. Everybody can be helped. Everybody can be reached to a great extent, and it can be done. Sometimes we have to partner with the school. Sometimes the schools are not aware of what's going on. Have to be very careful that making them aware is not going to have a negative effect. But sometimes bringing the Rebbe on board, if there's a good Rebbe, a caring Rebbe, a sensitive, a smart Rebbe, then that might also be of help to get things to happen.
Rabbi Cohen, there's one more question. It's going to be the punchline of the night. And then we're going to go to closing. Leave us for Divrei Chizuk at the end after we'll wrap up. This is the last question somebody sent in. We hear a great deal about unconditional love and the obligation and responsibility parents have regarding children. With all this, I ask, my question is, why do I hear very little about the children's obligation towards his and his parents? A frum child is aware that this is the fifth commandment, and we live in an age where there seems to be an emphasis on the entitlement and not the responsibility. I feel the question is relevant as the parents who must be mechanech their children to observe Torah mitzvahs to the best of their capabilities. And many thanks for giving guidance that is in touch with the world of our children without compromising on halacha and our beautiful Messiah.
Okay. I know it's not a very popular thought, but the best way to get respect from your children is to show them respect, both as a model and as a feeling of wanting to reciprocate. So that's something that we can't take lightly. Unfortunately, if we're asking for respect from our children, we're probably looking at it from that perspective rather than the perspective of showing them respect. But I think the best advice to get the respect is actually to show them that respect. We live in a world that does not respect anything. So it's very hard to expect that of them. And the only way is to set, a very positive example. Some people forget that sometimes the way we respect our parents influences the way our children respect their parents. And many children have seen images of, annoyance at the elderly parents who are not really, whatever, they're a pain, they're a burden, so that respect is also very important if you want respect from your children. I think unconditional love is extremely important. But unconditional love does not mean that they can do whatever they want. Unconditional love means that no matter what you do, I still love you as a person. I am not in love with what you're doing. I am very, very against what you're doing. And the reason I'm against it is because you're hurting yourself. You're not hurting me. You're not hurting Hashem, although you may be, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm worried about you hurting yourself. And so the fact that you're doing something bad does not take away from my love. It's because I love you that I want to change your behavior so you should have it better in this world. So you should be more happy. And I think that this stuff works. Respect and love for children will bring out respect and love from them.
Beautiful, Rabbi Cohen. Rabbi Cohen. So we're going to leave the closing at the end. First, we're going to wrap up a little bit, but the great Shaya is coming on tonight, Rabbi Cohen, and the tremendous chizik, the hundreds of people that were here tonight, the thousands of people that will hear this. And we always need chizik in this Indian. I think it's one of those topics that we need to hear again and again. It's not a one-time fix. But great Shaya, again, if anybody wants to join to get Sunday the flyers, please WhatsApp me at 848-525-0066. We'll go to menachemberfel.com. Again, every Sunday night at 9:30 p.m. on this Zoom ID, we have different topics. Next week, November 13th, it's going to be a surprise because nothing's confirmed yet. Working on a few things, but Menachem, it's going to be an amazing share. They all are, Baruch Hashem. And please join us. Again, everything's recorded. Menachem will be on menachemberfel.com. If anybody has any questions, email coachmenachem@gmail.com. Rabbi Cohen, do you want to give out any contact information? Anybody has questions? Anybody wants to get a hold of you? Priority one or whatever. I don't want you to get bombarded. Whatever you want.
Let's just give out the phone number for priority one, 516-295-5700, and either get someone to answer the phone or leave a message. We'll try to get back to you. And there is a website, priority-1.org, and there's a lot of information there, a lot of books to be downloaded, a lot of audio material, videos, all kinds of things that could be very helpful in the Chinuch process. And I think the ikar is that we have to be mispalel. There's a Meiri says that he brings a daya that says that one of the, it's a machlekes, what exactly were the 10 tests of Avraham Avinu. So he brings a daya that one daya that holds that one of the 10 tests was taking hogar to have a child and to be entering into Tsar Gidul Bonim when he thought that he wasn't going to have it anymore. That vies for one of the nisyonis of the 10 nisyonis of Avraham Avinu. Tsar Gidul Bonim is very difficult. It's my life. It's my child. I love this child. This is my flesh and blood. So we have to be mispal to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that Hashem should help us. And there's tremendous siyata d'shmaya when we're mispal, when we cry. When we cry for our children, great things can happen. But there's ishtadlus too. And ishtadlus is a lot of the things that we spoke about today to try to incorporate them into our constant ongoing relationship with our children. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu should help, that we should be zeicha to see children that are strong in Torah, in Yirah Shamayim, in Midas, and to bring a source of nachas and pride to all of Klal Yisrael.
Amen. Thank you everybody for coming tonight and joining. A great for your time. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you for the privilege. I appreciate it very much.
Good night, everybody. See you next week.
Good call, too.